Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chris Berryman, Chief Coalition Builder and founder of Bringing Humanity Together. Today, we're here with our host, none other than Sandy Chernoff for Share and Care with Sandy. As you jump on, feel free to comment in the comment section of this post and tell us where you're jumping on from. And if you're watching this on the replay, please sure to be commenting on the hashtag replay. This is one of the 3 open forums under the Bringing Humanity Together umbrella, where people can discuss topics related to the workplace, humanity in the workplace, in a very constructive and positive way. We want to know what the issues that you are facing and what's out there and that the people are facing, because that is our goal, to work with both the employees and the employers to bring humanity back to the workforce. And just to let you know, we can only have 6 on at a time. So if you guys want to be able to comment and or ask any questions, please feel free to do it in the comment section, whether it be on LinkedIn or also on YouTube. And if you're ready to get in the green room, I will put in the link to the green room. And Cindy, it is all yours. Take it away.
Okay, thanks, Chris. All right, well, what we're going to talk about today is stress. And, especially with this pandemic, it's something that really is an issue these days. And I guess it also depends what you do. Now, my background is dentistry, and I practiced clinical dental hygiene for over 40 years, and dentists have the highest suicide rate. And one of the reasons for that is we work in a very small, dark place, and most of the people that come in to see us are anxious and stressed out, and that sort of translates and emanates from them, and so it kind of affects those of us who work on them as well, because most people view going to the dentist as this. We go to the dentist, they hurt us, and we pay. So, they're usually stressed out. So the most important thing to do as a practitioner in dentistry is to try and establish trust, respect, and rapport with your patients so that they will be more relaxed. And if they're more relaxed and more comfortable, then you have a far better chance of helping them. Because otherwise, they're too stressed out to even listen to the things that you're telling them. So that doesn't help. So it's a matter of, figuring out how to gain that trust and that respect and that rapport. And the best way to do that is to listen very carefully so that you find out what really does concern them. And then you know how to package your message and how to deal with them in a way that will make them more comfortable. Because if they are more comfortable, then we have a far better chance of actually helping them. So it's just a matter of, what are you doing? And I think, it's probably not dissimilar in some situations for medicine, because if somebody's scared because they aren't feeling well and they don't know, oh, you love the dentist? Good for you, Brian. They don't know what's wrong, and it makes them scared and nervous. Well, that's something that in medicine they have to allay their fears as well and give them strategies and structure and so on and so forth. So when I do stress management workshops, I start by telling everyone that, what? Stress is different things to different people. And there are really no right answers or wrong answers. And you can't be judgmental on what somebody gets stressed by, because it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with their experiences. And if you work in an office where there are a lot of things that cause you stress, you have to figure out how to deflect it, because a little bit of stress is actually good. Do you know why? It gives you focus, because you get that spurt of adrenaline, which gives you, more energy and better focus and all kinds of things. So you want to leverage that. But long-term stress that goes on and on and on is very harmful to human beings. It really hurts us physiologically. It can cause irreversible damage to our organ systems, because we get a lot of cortisol in our system. And what that does is it speeds up all our organ functions and it can harm them. So it's really not something that's good over long term. But short-term stress, there's nothing wrong with short-term stress. It's good. Probably one of the most stressful jobs is an air traffic controller. These guys go in there, they got to prevent accidents from happening. And, but they're well trained and they know what to do. So it's just a matter of, again, it's a mindset. If you go in there and what's going to happen, and what if this happens, and when, well, then you're going to have a very stressful day. But if you go in there, okay, well, if this happens, I know I can do this or this, and if that happens, I can do this or this, and if this happens, I can call the supervisor. He can tell me what to do. Like whatever. It's just a matter of understanding what you can do. And so when I run these workshops, what I usually do is I run this one exercise, and I have the participants divvy up into groups. And I say, okay, one person will be the recorder, and what everybody else is going to do in the group is tell the recorder what causes you stress. So have them write down anything that causes them stress. And again, don't be ashamed, don't be afraid. It's different things to different people, so there are no wrong answers. It doesn't matter. And then the next part of the exercise is what strategies do you use to deflect your stress? Like what things do you? Some people walk their dog. Some people like to cook or bake. Some people like to draw. Some people sing. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, but whatever works for you. And again, there are no wrong answers. And sometimes something that someone does, somebody else will go, wow, I've never tried that. That's kind of interesting. Maybe I'll try that next time. And then the third piece of the exercise is, why do you not use those strategies? Because what I want them to see is it's a cycle. And a lot of times when we're stressed out, even though we may have strategies, we don't exercise them. We don't use them. So we stay stressed. So it's really, really important to have strategies and to actually use them so that we don't get sick, because it really is important. And of course, today with this pandemic, human beings are very social creatures, and we've been told to stay home and not mingle with people outside of our household, and so on and so forth. And I mean, it's very nice that we have the technology that we have today, so we can visit with people on Skype and Zoom and this sort of thing, whatever. But it's not the same as actually being with your friends. I mean, we Skype with our grandsons every Sunday, or we try to, because they live in Toronto, which is a 5-hour plane ride away from us. And it's very nice to have a conversation with the boys every Sunday, but it's not the same. I don't get my hugs. I don't get to do things with the boys. It's just, I really miss them, and we haven't seen them for almost 2 years. It's just the little one. I said to him a couple months ago, I said, Sam, we haven't seen you guys for almost, a year and a half now. And he looks at me and goes, we see you on Skype every Sunday. I said, yeah. But I said, it's not the same, Sam. I don't get my hugs. So he wraps his arms around himself like this, and he goes, I'm hugging you as tight as I can. Can you feel it? It's so cute. But it's just, I mean, I even miss not seeing my son and my daughter-in-law. We have some very close friends in Toronto too, but I mean, we can't go anywhere. I'm not getting on a plane for 5 hours anytime soon. So stress, again, it's different things to different people, and it just depends on what stresses you and what you do when you're stressed. People who are taking care of elderly parents or sick kids or whatever, that's long-term stress. And those people really need to have strategies to relax themselves from time to time in order to cope with this, because otherwise they're going to get sick. And if they get sick, what's going to happen? Like, it's just who's going to take care of the kid, or who's going to take care of whoever they're taking care of. So you need to take care of yourself. It's very important, which means that sometimes maybe you need a break. So maybe a sibling or, somebody else needs to take this on from time to time to give you a break, because it is very, very important to have a break from extreme stress, because otherwise, terrible things can happen, and it's a shame. I mean, I don't know when this pandemic is going to be over, but I don't think we're going to see the end of it much before the end of this year. So, because, well, here in Canada in particular, we don't have enough vaccines. And so we've only vaccinated somewhere between 2 and 3% of our population, which is pretty scary. Fortunately, I've had the first shot, and so has my husband. And my sister-in-law, who's 91, has also had her first shot. But we have to wait now 3 or 4 months to get the second shot. But at least it's a start. And what they're trying to do now is vaccinate all the frontline workers and some of the younger people, because one of the things that's happened here, particularly in BC, is the Brazilian mutation, which is apparently really awful, is being caught by a lot of young people. And they're ending up hospitalized and really sick. In fact, the Canucks, which is our Vancouver hockey team, have now been suspended because 19 of them have tested positive for COVID. I don't know which one, but I think it's the Brazilian one. And even 3 of the coaching staff apparently have tested positive. They don't use the names of the coaching staff, but it's pretty scary. And some of the other teams have been in the same situation where they had to isolate for a couple of weeks and, get over this. But even these young people who are supposedly in very good shape, and of course hockey players are, they still have gotten the disease, and some of them are pretty sick.
Wow.
So, it's scary. I mean, it really is scary. So it isn't just the elderly who are vulnerable to this. And
Hey,
course,
Sandy, I find one of the questions very interesting on how you do your stress workshops. And I'd love to know some of the answers as to why people say that they don't use the strategies that they're given.
Well, because I think that they just, when they're stressed out, they don't think very clearly. And so they kind of think that, well, it'll just go away. I don't need to do anything right now, But then they get so entrenched that then they just forget that they need to do something to help themselves. And it's scary. So when I've pointed that out to them, you got to step back. Okay, I know what to do. I need to do it. I need to take care of myself because nobody else is going to take care of me. That may be a very selfish point of view, but I'm sorry. We need to take care of ourselves. The best way to do that is to do the things that make us feel better. So whether you need to go for a walk with your dog in the park, or you need to get out your bicycle and ride for an hour, or you need to go for a run, or you need to go to the gym and work out, or you need to go to a dancing class, or you need to sing, or you need to go into your kitchen and bake. I mean, it doesn't matter what you like to do. You need to go and do whatever it is to take your mind off what's making you crazy, because it's not going to go away if you don't deal with it. And once those cortisol levels get high, it's a problem. And so it's very important, that we deal with that before it turns into something that causes irreversible physiological damage in our bodies. So it's very important to pay attention to that. And again, because of this pandemic, there's a lot of people that are stressed out. And there's a lot of people that are depressed and unhappy, particularly people who live alone. It's very, very hard when you live alone. I mean, I'm lucky, at least I have my husband, and fortunately for me, he's a wonderful guy and we get along really well and we have a lot of fun. And, so we sort of laugh about a lot of this stuff. And every day that it's nice, like today, we generally go for a walk. So we get outside and we get some fresh air. We always have our masks with us. So if we see other people or if we walk in a commercial area or something, we wear our mask, but we get outside and get some fresh air and get a little bit of exercise. And where we live, there are other people walking around. So sometimes we'll visit with our neighbors on the street, socially distanced, both wearing masks, but we don't go into their homes. The only house that we go into is my sister-in-law's. We don't go into anybody else's house. And initially our daughter wouldn't even come into our house. Now she does, but she lives alone. And that's the reason why she got a dog. I sent you some pictures, Chris, of the dog.
Yes. Those dog pictures are awesome.
Aren't they?
She's on the website. And just like you, Brian, we got to have a picture of your dog too.
Yeah.
She's so cute, this dog. First of all, she's this big. Literally, you can hold her in your hand. She's tiny. She's like a little white fluff ball. And she is, but she's very energetic. Lisa told me yesterday when she came over here that the dog's name is Apple. Go figure. Anyway, that she jumped onto my daughter's bed. She literally jumped onto the bed. Lisa couldn't believe it. And we found out on Sunday, my son just got a dog. Never had a dog, and they've got a dog. It's a combination shiatsu and something else. Anyway, the boys are very excited about this. I said to Mark, yeah, so who's going to be taking care of the dog? And he looks at me, who do you think? I said, you, of course.
Of course.
So
Got the dog for the boys, but not going to happen. Well, they love it. I mean, they're having a lot of fun with this dog, but, he's basically got to do most of the work. It just is what it is, but that's okay. I think it's nice for the boys to have a pet to play with and, do different things with, and that's fine. So
It's a great
cool.
stress reliever.
Mm-hmm. My daughter-in-law had a dog. Yeah, my daughter-in-law had a dog when she was a kid, so I think she talked my son into getting it for the boys, and that's fine. Whatever works for them to have fun, because right now they're not in school. They're doing it online again, and my older grandson doesn't mind doing it online, but the little one really would prefer to be at school with his friends. He's very social, and so he sometimes needs help. So his mom both my son and daughter-in-law are working from home right now. So Kim usually works in the room beside Sam's. So if he needs help, he comes in, Mommy, I need your help. So Kim has to let go whatever she's doing and go and help him on his computer with whatever he's doing. But Jack he's very good on the computer, and he actually likes being on his own and doing stuff by himself. He kind of thinks it's cool. He's almost 12, so, it's different. Sam is almost 9. But they're very different boys. The little one is very social, and the older one is very, very, very smart. And he's not nearly as social as his brother. He reads and he does all kinds of things. He from the time he was very small, he liked to learn things. Jack was reading by 3.
Wow.
Yeah, he could read by 3. And he's like my husband. He has a calculator for a brain. So he does, all kinds of arithmetic and stuff in his head, like my husband. When we go to Costco, by the time we get to the cash, my husband knows what the bill's going to be. And he sometimes shocks the cashier, because he said, well, that should probably come out to, whatever. The cashier looks at him. And then when it's, when it's added up and it comes out and it's very close to what he said, he goes, how did you do that? He said, he has a calculator for a brain.
So, Melinda, what is your point of view when it comes to stress? How do you relieve stress?
Are you asking me, Chris?
We're asking Melinda. Obviously, she's having.
Melinda, can you hear us?
She had trouble with her microphone the other day, too.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to Melinda. Brian, how do you relieve stress, whether to be at work or on the golf course?
I shift the context of whatever situation I'm in.
You what? Sorry?
I shift the context of whatever situation I'm in.
In what way?
Stress is completely 100% self-induced.
Yes, I agree.
And it's future-based. So how you relate or orient to your future, you tend to live into the future you see coming at you. So if you create it in such a way that it's open and possible, stress is less of an impact as if you were reliving something or in regret of something or in fear of something happening. You tend to have more thoughts that are associated with fear. And as Sandy mentioned, the longer you buy into those thoughts, you have body sensation. Whatever that body sensation is different for each person. But if it goes unchecked for a long period of time, it can do some real serious damage. Physically, it could be really bad for people. But the stuff that I've read about it and experienced, it tends to be generated from a thought about some other time that leads to it. It's a little like, we're living in a time now through a pandemic, and people say we're inside of a pandemic. I've yet to quite figure out how we get into something like that. But that's another conversation. But my point, though, is if you believe that you're going to get sick or you fearful that something might happen, you're going to generate more types of thoughts that could lead to a negative connotation or something negative to the body. Whereas if you created the same context and said, no, chances are that might not happen, or the chances are it might happen, they're both possibilities, you can choose to go a different direction and your body will respond differently. It's not to say that things don't happen. I just look at a lot of companies and they make these assertions and people make comments and say stuff and they live right into them. And they wonder why history repeats itself or why they get the answers or kind of outcomes that they get. It's fascinating. I mean, I've talked to some people and I work with a lot of individuals in coaching and otherwise. And they shared a story once with one of their clients who was having a very difficult time holding down a job. And I think they had gone through something like 3 or 4 jobs in, 6 to 12 month period. And it finally got to a point where coach asked them, when did you decide that you were going to leave your job? And of course, the person exploded. Oh, I didn't decide to do anything. But we unconsciously or consciously make decisions that we carry on with ourselves from behaviors that we've learned previously from others. And it turned out that that person's father could never keep a job. So they inadvertently took on that persona and lived right into it. And I think stress is a similar type of, I guess, lack of a better term would be, paradigm in a way. That, if you believe that something negative is going to happen to you because it happened to you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 minutes ago, and you think the next situation is going to be exactly the same, well, guess what? You're probably right. You asked about golf and so forth. It's interesting. Imagine stepping up onto a hole and you hit a shot and it goes errantly out of bounds or in the water or something, and you hit a second shot. The first thing that goes to most people's minds is, don't do that again.
Mm-hmm.
Or you see water, don't hit it in the water. Well, where do you think the ball goes? The brain can't process negative emotion and negative thoughts, and we think about stuff, and it's amazing how we kind of have a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I say I don't want to fail, what do you think is going to happen? Chances are you're going to fail, right? I mean, and I'm not promoting positive self-talk and so forth and in all of that, which is fine, but it's all just more thought. I think stress is tricky. It's certainly something that exists physically for some people. Other people handle it differently, and I think it's purely how a situation occurs for people. Chris, as I've told you before, I've never met anyone who performs better under pressure. We talk about that stuff and we say, athletes perform well under pressure. We work better under pressure. I don't believe that at all. I don't think anyone performs better under pressure. Pressure has a way of creating our bodies and our minds to focus. I think people work and perform better when they're focused, and we enjoy the focus. We don't enjoy the pressure. So, the language behind it means something. Stress is just something that you create. We could look at the same situation. You might be stressed out about it. I might not. Carla is petrified of snakes. That's a thought about what does snakes do. Oddly, I've been petrified of snakes my entire life, and now all of a sudden I turn on the TV, I see one, and I no longer am petrified for some reason. I don't know why. It changed. So,
see, when I was a kid, Brian, I used to scare little boys because I'd pick up a snake and run after them.
See, Carla, no, absolutely not. You can see in her facial expressions completely changed.
And I know nothing is going to happen, but I don't like bugs and I don't like snakes.
It's fascinating because it's so much of the stress that we put on ourselves or create is so illogical and really doesn't have any basis to it. It's like fear. Fear is not really real. It's thought. And it's not to say that bad things don't happen or you can't find yourselves in terrible situations. I'm just saying that we have the ability to maybe shift that so you don't experience it in the same way.
A lot of it has to do with your attitude and your mindset, Brian. I totally agree with you. Yeah. People bring things on themselves. I mean, if you decide that you're going to get sick, you'll probably get sick.
Oh, yeah.
If you decide this isn't going to happen to me, I'm not going to let this happen to me, I'm going to be just fine. Well, then you'll probably be just fine. A lot of it has to do with our attitude.
Absolutely. And it's not to say that I don't get stressed or anyone else doesn't feel stress or experience it from time to time. But, I've experienced it, but it's never driven me to extreme. Yeah, I feel it for a period of time and you kind of work through it and you move on, but it's never been debilitating.
Doesn't have to be.
Thankfully, no, and it doesn't have to be.
Because again, it's how you look at things. I mean, if you decide that this is going to stress you out, it will stress you out. If you decide I can handle this, I'm not gonna get stressed out about this. It's no big.
Sandy, and what you mentioned is interesting because it just brought. I wonder if it has anything to do with the level of significance we place on stuff.
Yep, probably does. And I think a lot of it also has to do with your own experience in terms of what you have gone through and how people have treated you and so on in the past. And again, it's a matter of overcoming that sort of stuff. I mean, I had to, because my dad was just very, very hard on me. And the reason he was is because his mother was very hard on him. And he parented me the way his mother parented him, because he was also the oldest in the family. And once I got away, I went away to university. And once I got away from my dad, I could, leave that behind me and just do my own thing and decide that this is good enough and I'm happy with this and, whatever. And even though I came back and worked for him, I by then had enough confidence, like I said, that I could stand up to him. And after a while, he left me alone. Because he just figured, well, I guess I can't do this anymore. She won't take it. So, I'll just back off. So he finally did. And it was kind of interesting. And before he died, I mean, I was able to, kind of deal with all this bad stuff. And what happened was that from the time I had that meeting with him until he died, we actually were very comfortable with one another. It was kind of interesting. And I did a really big project. I was running something called the Hadassah Bazaar, which is a really big bazaar. It's huge. And he even phoned me and said, "You're doing the bazaar, you're going to do a great job. Good for you for taking this on," like whatever. He'd never said anything like that to me in my whole life. So, it was kind of interesting, but it changed our relationship because I just decided I couldn't let him die without sorting this out, because then I'd be carrying that around with me for the rest of my life. Sadly, neither of my siblings actually had it out with him before he died. And my brother still suffers sometimes because of that, because he also worked with my dad. And in fact, my brother, because also watching, and he's the baby, one summer, it was the summer that he applied to university, and our parents were away. And Dave was really worried that he wasn't going to get in. I have no idea why he was worried. He was a good student. There should have been no reason for him to worry that he was not going to get into UBC. But he was driving me crazy. What if I don't get in? Dad will be so mad, whatever. So anyway, I happened to know the registrar at the university because he was a friend of my grandfather's, and my grandfather had raised a lot of money. I'd been with him many times. Also, he taught me math in first year university. So I phoned him. And I said, "Do you remember who I am?" He said, "Of course I remember who you are." I said, "Well, I have a little problem. I'm hoping you can help me." He says, "Well, what is it?" I said, "Well, my brother's applied to first year science, UBC, and he's afraid he didn't get in. Is there any way that you could let us know so that, we know what's going on? Because my parents are away and he's driving me nuts." He laughed. He said, "I'll have my secretary phone you in a couple of hours." And sure enough, a couple hours later, his secretary phoned me. He said, "Your brother's accepted." I said, "Oh, thank God. And thank you so much for getting back to me." So I told my brother, and he looked at me and goes, "How did you find that out?" I said, "Because I know Parnell." "You do?" And I said, "Yeah." So anyway, he finally left me alone. But he was nervous because he figured Dad would be really upset with him. But there was no reason, like you said, Brian, it was in his mind, because there was no reason for him to be worried. He was a good enough student to get in. That wasn't a problem. I mean, listen, he graduated from dentistry. You can't do that if you don't have brains. It's too hard a course. So, and it was kind of interesting that he was so stressed out about this. Because, I mean, my sister certainly wasn't when she applied to university. And, she was shocked. She was absolutely so surprised that Dave was going crazy. So, it's just a matter, it's like you said, Brian, it depends on what your experience is and what's going through your head. And you make it up. I mean, he made it up. It wasn't anything to be worried about. But I just couldn't stand him bugging me. So that's why I had to straighten it out. But it's just, I agree with you. I think that people stress out and people have different issues because they create it in their own mind. And it's not necessarily real, but it's real to them. So it's a matter of them stepping back and going, just a minute, what is this? Like, what am I doing here? This isn't real. And, whatever. There were twin boys that lived near me, and they were scared to death of snakes, Carla. And I wasn't. So, when they would come over, I would pick up a garter snake and chase them. They couldn't believe.
I'm not coming to your house.
I know. They couldn't believe that a girl would do this. They just couldn't believe it. And well, I don't do that anymore, but that's when I was, like 8 or 9 years old. So, but it's just, I just couldn't understand why they were afraid of it. Garter snakes are harmless, like they won't hurt you. Okay, I mean,
when you're about 6, they look awfully long.
of course, they're scary, but I never found them scary. So, it was just a matter of they did. And that's why I chased them with the snake, because I thought it was so funny that they were so scared. But it's just,
I won't even go into the snake house at the zoo.
Okay.
And
Sure.
when my stepdaughter lived with us, she had a bearded lizard, and I said, I'm okay with that as long as it stays in the cage. And then she said she thought she was going to get a tarantula or a snake, and I said, no, you're not. No, you're not.
A tarantula? No, I don't.
I vetoed it. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want one of those in the house. If it got up
vetoed
and
that.
hit somebody, it would be a real problem. So no, we don't want those.
If it's my house, you ain't getting one.
Yeah. Fair enough. That's fair. But
So-
it's just. Go ahead, Chris.
So Melinda, let's hear from you. How do you relieve stress at either at work or at home? How do you deal with that?
Is she having trouble with her audio again?
Are you muted?
Can you hear us, Melinda? Well, I guess we'll have to come back to her. What about you, Sandy? Do you take your therapy to 18, or what do you do?
Well, you know what, Chris? I don't stress anymore, which is
I don't
kind of
either.
I really don't. I learned when I was practicing hygiene that it's just something that you can't do. Like it just doesn't help you. So I learned to deal with my patients by getting to know them and supporting them and setting up trust and rapport with them so that they would be comfortable so that I could help them. And in doing that, it relieved their stress because then they weren't uncomfortable seeing me. And so they didn't come in with all that stress emanating off of them because that's, what really makes you crazy. And then as far as life is concerned, I mean, I'm old enough at this stage of my life where, life is too short to be stressing out over little tiny things all the time. It just doesn't make any sense. It's a waste of time. So I really don't. The only time I get a little upset sometimes is sometimes my daughter and I are kind of like this sometimes. So, sometimes she phones me up and she just yells at me on the phone. The other day she did that and I said, Elisa, it's enough. I'm hanging up now. Goodbye. And she phoned back and spoke to my husband. Mommy, hung up on me. He said, no, I heard her. She said goodbye.
It's called setting boundaries.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just was tired of her yelling at me. So, it's just a matter of, we don't always have those kind of conversations. Sometimes we get along quite nicely. But sometimes she just gets in these moods and, I just don't want to talk to her anymore. Like, it's enough. I've had it. So, but that's.
So you're her stress reliever. She
I
wants
guess
to call you and vent to you.
Exactly. I told
You
her
want to
that.
tell her to go out and take a walk.
Well, that's what she
Politely
did.
tell her to take a hike.
She walked over here yesterday. I actually thought she was going to bring the dog because she's got one of these little halter things that she puts the dog in, just like you put a baby in.
Yeah.
And so sometimes she puts Apple in there. But I was so surprised when she got here yesterday because she walked from her house to our place and she didn't have the dog with her. I said, how come you didn't bring Apple? He said, oh, I didn't want to bring her today, whatever. She's very busy doing her thing at home. I went, okay, fine. Sometimes this dog is really funny. She looks out the window. Like she'll just sit there and look out the window at things that are going on outside. She's a very funny little dog. She really is. But that's okay. It's what makes it interesting. And I think for my daughter, it's a good thing because now she's not totally alone. Now she has someone that she has to look after and have someone to sort of have company and, whatever. Because for Elisa, this has been really hard. And the reason it's been really hard is she's basically a social butterfly and she has all kinds of friends. And this has been exceedingly difficult for her because she's also at very high risk. And so she had to keep her bubble small. And it's been very hard for her. And that's the reason why she got the dog. And we encouraged her. We said, sure, sounds like a good idea. It'll give you company. And, it is nice. And so, that's all good. And we're happy that, that she's happy with the dog. And she seems much happier since she got the dog. So that's all good. And, it's just a matter of, again, how do you deal with this stuff? And people who don't exercise strategies are the ones that get into trouble. And there's no reason why, if you know what to do, that you aren't doing it, and you need to. And it's very important. I don't know why some people don't, Brian. I just think that they sort of get so caught up in their stress, they forget that they know something that they can do to help them, and then they don't. But it's just a matter of reminding people, if you have some strategies to deflect your stress, then exercise those strategies, because it is very important to help you. And again, like when I teach presentation skills, I tell people, usually when you stand in front of an audience for the first time, you don't know what the dynamics of the cohort will be. And so generally you're a little bit nervous, but that's okay. Leverage that nervousness to help you, to give you focus and to give you energy so that you will be able to do a good job. And that's also why I tell people not to memorize their talk, whatever it may be, because when you get nervous like that, it will fall on the floor and you're done. So you don't want to memorize it. You need to know it inside out, upside down, backwards, and in your sleep. And that's why we have PowerPoint. It reminds us of the things we want to talk about. So, it's fine. We used to have little cards, cue cards. Remember? Yeah. So now we have PowerPoint. So, it's just a matter of understanding that there are things we can do to help us. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we need to leverage that boost of adrenaline so that it helps us to focus and helps us to let our passion out and do a good job with whatever it is that we're doing. And if people leverage it in that way and understand it in that way, then it's far better. Like when I teach that, I tell a story about myself where I screwed up. And, and I did. I think I told you guys this. It's a story where instead of saying presidency, out came pregnancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For 3-year pregnancy. I don't think so. So anyway, of course, I started to laugh. That was exactly what I did. I started to laugh. And of course, that lets the audience laugh.
Oh, too bad Susan's not here for that story. She'd love that story. Does she know that story?
I don't know. So it's just a matter of, and I told you, one of my friends that was on the end of the dais said to me as I walked off, "You did that on purpose." I said, "Oh yeah, I made a complete ass of myself in front of 800 people and they caught it on tape." "I don't think so." She said, "Well, nice recovery." I said, "Well, listen, you know me, I laugh at everything." So it gives permission to the audience to laugh because it's funny. I didn't get worried about it. Otherwise I just think, "Oh my God, the speaker screwed up, they made a mistake, whatever." You make the audience tense. Well, then you got to fix it. So it's just a matter of what do you do? So yeah, it was a little slip of the tongue. It happens to people.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you need to, go into despair and stress out and, fall off the stage. I mean, it's just fix it. Just, be a natural person. Admit your mistake. Who cares? Human
You have
beings.
to laugh at yourself.
Yeah. And human beings are very imperfect creatures. Mistakes are made all the time. Mistakes are opportunities to learn. People need to step back and go, okay, so what happened here? All right, so how can I fix it? People who just stress out and, I don't know what to do and how to, well, step back, start problem solving. And if you can't come up with the right answer, ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Take a deep breath.
Exactly. But it's just a matter of what are people doing? And I think that people need to be taught from a young age. This is something that happens to people, and they need to start from an early age knowing that there are things they can do. And it's okay when something goes wrong. It's not the end of the world. A lot of people think it's the end of it's not. Yes, it's too bad that mistakes happen, but we're human. Listen, we wouldn't have airplanes flying in the skies if the Wright brothers didn't make a lot of mistakes before they got everything off the ground. So they tried this. Oh, that didn't work. They tried something else. Oh, that didn't work either. Oh, and they kept trying until they finally got it off the ground. And that's how a lot of things are discovered. First, you make mistakes. Find out what doesn't work. So keep working at it till you find out what does work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really what it's about. And there's nothing wrong with that. Human beings have brains, and they can think, and they can problem solve. And
People not coming back.
Some
people, they're suffering so badly.
Hey, Melinda.
So they really need to make our lives safer. And how we're going to help that is by we all have to come together and speak as one team to fix this situation. and is to keep the mask going eventually, I think. And even if you're vaccinated, that doesn't mean you can't get this disgusting virus.
No, it doesn't. That's
So
for sure.
I come from a really strict, rigid upbringing where there's not much role for playing around in gray area and all that. It's you're going right or you're going left. There's no middle. You're going one or the other. And the way I came up, we always know that we use science, and all you know is that they tell you everything. You know, I think it's a wonderful thing when you see a child is born. Okay, that's just a miracle thing. I just can't. It's amazing. So just the way that you grow up in science and advance step by step from those big computers, the big phones, and all that. Now we should think about how America is going to bring this all together, contain it, and try to keep it in a lower profile and then get everybody vaccinated if that's what America's doing. Every person in the states, and what's the point of having certain people in certain states get it and some people don't want to get it? There needs to be a law, rule, or regulation that we all follow and we all have to do it. Because at the end of the day, people are going to go back to their normal jobs, offices. And so what you're going to say, just go back to the office? How do you know that someone didn't have it on a vacation and come back now fresh with it? You know, I was listening to the news the other day and it said that you going on vacation, people coming back from the vacation, people contracting. So there needs to be some type of system in place where they already have it that big brother is watching the little sister and all that. But you know what? Work together. This is a human situation. It's from human to human with the droplets or whatever the time that it is exchanged. So we really need to look at that. So just the way you want to improve on the job, and stress is constantly at our, you know, we have that right now big because of this pandemic. People need to help each other. They see someone, possibly a family member has it, and they know that person. Reach out to someone, talk to them. You don't have to ask them personal questions, but just be a little soft because you never know who is experiencing what at work. Be kind. And there's a sermon in the Bible that said, "Do to each other what you want to each other." So just the way you want to be treated, I think we all should look at that and role model that, and how we treat our friends and our family, etc. But this is going to take a lot of time. You know, if you really think about impacting lives and changing someone's life, you know, someone could be broken, domestic violence, rape, list goes on, dysfunctional family upbringing, and person comes up to you, they're going to approach you in a certain way, a certain manner that's very, very like, you know, scary, nervous, like they're not approachable. They might not feel good about themselves. And that's what I think part of bringing things together, you got to think about the little people down there. And those little people you want to bring up. And hopefully they take that information that you give to them and say, you know what, that lady, that man, he's trying to help me. He's trying to help me go around the corner, not to, you know, not have what I want in my life. So if I'm like the little engine that could, and I meet you and you say to me, you know what, I need help in math. Okay, maybe I don't like that particular math course, so I'll refer you to my friend who is an expert in math and helps you. And then you say, well, you know what, I'm going to take the Regents at the end of the year. Again, working together. It's a collective effort. We work together, not against each other. That's the only way we're going to stay positive towards each other to beat this pandemic and go past this pandemic. You know, you have to really think about life, not just today, but tomorrow. I used to think when I was 16, I remember sitting down and just sitting, playing around and saying, man, I can't wait till I get older. I can't wait till I get older. I'm like, what is so big about it? I'm many years older now. And if I could have a crystal ball to tell me that in 2000, until this time, that this pandemic would be the new life, the new normal, I would have just told you, yeah, right, you're talking, you're just playing with me, right? You know, it's just an amazement. It's really an amazement. I mean, I follow what the law says. I believe that we need to follow the laws, the rules, the guidelines for our betterment. If you don't follow, then you have a chance of going down the bad road. And right now, the bad road is getting this thing. And who wants to get that? Because the way it attacks the human body I've never seen anything like this. They don't even call it pneumonia, really. It's on its own beast, really. So you really need to think about working together and collectively, because America needs that type of umbrella formation to see us through this, pandemic. That's going to be a part of our lives for a long time, unfortunately. And I get a little political at times because, I never think big of politicians. I know what they're out for. And I think being an American, going to school in this big world called America, and having the freedom to vote and speak on behalf of what you believe in is important. And I think that sometimes when you make up that mind to say, well, I'm a independent versus a Republican versus a Democrat, that's a big decision. Because whichever party that you represent that group and that big group, that part of that pie, whatever that pie works out to be. And it's not like you just represent a small pie. If you choose to go further, like run for some type of political party or something like that, then you can have a chance to impact the people's lives in your district and state. But before you get there, there's a lot of things you have to do. I'm sure you have to run for this, that, and this title and win, and by so many as you see on TV. But if you really look at the whole structure of the American polity, it comes down to working together. If you're in the president's office, the administration, everybody's working together. Even if they don't like each other, they work together. And if they get fired, they get fired, like we hear on TV. But the unity and coming together is the same platform we need, and for us to drive everybody together to make things happen in America that's on the same plate. When I say that, I mean we're all doing the same thing. I don't know why, if you live in Florida, you have a different rule for certain things, like you commit a crime and capital punishment in this state versus another state, or you committed it but you live in another state. It's different rules. So people sometimes get off scot-free because of laws, regulations, and either it's not enforced properly. And I think that's another problem that we have. I mean, it's like almost like telling a criminal to go, hey buddy, if you know it, just go to that state, commit it there, to what you're doing, and just go to the other state and you're going to get off. I've seen stuff, either they don't get off completely, but they get a less of a sentence. I don't know what's that about. It's another thing that America needs to work on, the crime. there's a lot of crime, and we have this hate crime against the Asians, and that is really troubling. I went to school with a lot of Asians and a lot of people from different backgrounds. And I think that if you're from a different background than you're German or you're Italian, oh, I love to learn because I want to learn the language. That's so rich for me. It's not the negative, but a lot of people have the opposite. And for some reason, because of possibly they want to point the finger to a former president, that he has said that they're the people that did this. When you have someone in power like that, you hope that they are cognizant of what they're saying, but some people just speak without a filter. And I think that's his run, and that's the way he is. I mean, it's not everyone you meet in your life that you could just listen to and they just go up to, just speak and say whatever. I mean, he just doesn't care. I think he doesn't care at all, and this problem that we're having right after in time was kind of like catalyst of part of his actions. And I don't think that anyone should feel any different when they go into their job, their work, wherever, because the president says something like that. So things like that, they add up to more problems and issues. And this is a big issue right now. Many Asians are, they're just, people are being beaten up for no reason. Just random assaults or whatever kind of behavior, violently, and people just standing there watching it. Now, again, about bringing humanity together and connecting, we need to speak about these problems. Why are the Asians being targeted? For whatever reason, we need to find out what we need to do to eradicate these problems, because they're just adding to the table, adding to the plate.
Well, Melinda, what happens in our society?
And I think that all these problems need to be put down and basically have a team really, really enthusiastically break them down.
Well, like I said to you before, Melinda, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I know in my heart of hearts there are people out there stressing. They're going through pain. And how we can be able to truly bring humanity together, we must, in one way, shape, or form, at least extend that invitation out to others to do that. But Brian, I just love what you just said, though. What side of the equation are you on? Cause or the effect? Expand on that, Brian.
Well, I mean, if you listen to what most people say, they blame the world, they blame other people, they blame circumstances, they blame their situations for putting them in these positions. They're the victim in their life, as opposed to being cause in your life. That your behavior, actions, attitudes, and so forth have nothing to do with what anyone says around you, nor does it have anything to do with the situation or the circumstances that you're in. That your behavior is completely predicated on how that situation occurs to you. If you think that somebody's evil and nasty and mean or toxic, or previous presidents or governments, or, we're in a pandemic, if we believe that all of that is the cause of making us miserable, guess what? You're right. But you're also correct if that has nothing to do with you being miserable. Because there's a whole lot of people in the world who are perfectly happy and go about living their life happy. It's a choice. You know, if you want to be the victim, Chris, go right ahead, be the victim. Blame whoever you want. Say that the world is miserable and awful. Go ahead. You know, that's completely your right. I choose not to go through life that way. I think that in certain ways, the world is perfect in exactly the way it's supposed to be, based on the level of awareness that people have. And as soon as I add or manipulate or change or say that something should be different than it is, then yeah, I'm creating the circumstances differently. It's my interpretation. You know, I don't think that the government or anyone should be mandating that anyone do anything outside of what their rights are. The federal government in this country doesn't have those rights. That's why it's states' rights. It's a federalist system. It's designed a certain way so that we don't have, you know, kings and queens in ruling classes. But you know, the cause side of it is that, yeah, I'm caused in the matter. What I say, what I do can have an impact on other people. And what other people say to me could, if I allow them to, have an impact on what I do. But my point is that that's only if I choose to be it that way. So, you know, part of the problem that I see, if you're gonna consider it a problem, is that people don't actually listen and or respect other people's models of the world. We believe that since I view the world the way that I do, everyone should look at it the way that I do because I think I'm right. And the problem is that that's just an erroneous assumption. Good, you can believe that, whatever that is, but don't assume the person sitting next to you or the 10 people in the same room as you are going to believe that way. I think that's where we get disconnected with people, is that we assume that everyone should be doing what I want to be doing. You know, because I believe that my view of the world is correct, so therefore you should have the same view, Chris. And I think that's just, one, that's a little erroneous, and two, that's kind of arrogant. You know, it's a bit like people in the world who believe that it rains on this planet to sustain life. I don't know about you, but that's one of the most idiotic and arrogant things I've ever heard people say. Imagine that it just happens to rain on the planet. It has nothing to do with sustaining life. See, we place significance on our world. We think we're more important than we really are. But what if I told you that the cosmos has no interest, nor does it care what you intend to do today, tomorrow, for the rest of your life? See, we actually think that other people care about us, when in fact, the world is inherently selfish to an extent, and it should be inherently selfish. Like, values are interesting because we tend to believe that we buy into big values of the greater good. Yeah, we will, only and when our own self values are taken care of. Like, whether you like it or not, or believe in Maslow or not, the first thing that you worry about is your own self-protection, safety, food, shelter, right? And then you worry about someone else. Like, it's not, you're not looking at the greater good first. You have to take care of yourself first. So frankly, worry about your own life. And I always find it interesting because so many people that I come across who complain that the world has to be a certain way and we should take care of everyone else are the people who don't have their own houses in order. And so, you know, was it this week or last week? I forget, someone had mentioned, you know, you have to learn how to lead yourself before you can lead someone else.
Right.
Right? I mean,
And you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's someone who's incapable of taking care of themselves, like children or elderly or certain people that you have to take. I mean, you're not going to leave them just be.
Right, right.
You know, unless you're, you know, inept or have some other motivation. I mean, that's not what we're talking about here. But, you know, yeah, I just think that people should really be worrying about what they need to be worrying about, as opposed to constantly preaching to other people what we should or shouldn't be doing. And it's not to say you don't want to make it better for everyone else, but you have to kind of look at it a little differently. At least that's my experience. So,
Well, people talk about how we should all want the whole world to be better, or we all want the whole world to be better. But I am aware of what is going on in my circle.
Yes.
And so what's going to happen is that I take care of myself. I take care of the people around me. I treat them with love and respect. And I am a positive person. I help out where I can. And that just grows and grows and grows. And hopefully we will expand that to where it's on a global basis.
Yeah, and Carla, I would even add, what does better mean? I mean, better for you might be defined differently by Sandy or me or Chris or Melinda. There's no unified way to what's better.
Years ago in the early 2000s, when there was discussion about terrorist attacks and gas attacks and all this other kind of stuff, I had been down in Haiti for a week on a medical mission. And first off, when you get back to Miami, it's like everybody's cell phone is pinging, going off in the airplane, and back then there were no cell phones in Haiti. Somebody had like a global cell phone, satellite phone. That was it. So it was like a whole week off the grid. So you get back to the States, and I'm finally taking a hot shower after a week, and I hear on the radio that there's some woman who was so afraid of the world that she wrapped her house in cellophane and died. And I'm just like, I'm ready to go back to Haiti, where those people love every second of every day because they don't know any better. They don't know about the chaos of the world. And in some respects, I didn't want to know about it either. I wanted to go back there.
But see, Carla, you're bringing up a great point. And this is why I've learned from Brian so much. We shouldn't put our reality onto someone else's reality, thinking that that's their reality, when in fact it's not. It's ours. We can't do that. We inherently, like Brian just said, we are inherently selfish for ourselves because we're numero uno. But what if we can take that selfishness that we have for ourselves and know where it's placed and how we should place it in the very place and time that we have it? And if we do take care of us first and get all that out of the way, maybe, just maybe, like you said, Carla, it does go out into the circles and creates that ripple effect and goes to where it needs to go. And that's all well and good. But like what Brian said, you're absolutely right when you say everyone's version of better is going to be different because we're uniquely different in our own right to begin with. But that's when, again, we need to recognize that what really unites us is the thing that really should be looked upon now more than ever before, versus what people have been telling us to look at right now, whether it be in media or otherwise, that this is what divides us right now. This is what's making us stressed out. Go ahead.
The media is very good at dividing. It's what it's good at. They're good at creating a dichotomy of options, and you have to pick or choose. I mean, it's called managed perception. I mean, it's a version of programming.
The other problem is social media, because there's so much on social media now, and a lot of it isn't true. So, people, they don't know where to get their information either, Brian. So, it's hard. And it's like you said, it's everybody's perception. It depends on your own, all that kind of stuff. And if we're not paying attention to that, then you can't impose this on other people. It's just not appropriate. And it doesn't.
We all have different models of the world, and we should be okay with dealing with other people's models of the world. I mean, we talk about being tolerant of other people and being open-minded. Yet everyone that I've ever seen who says they're open-minded are the least open-minded and the first to criticize. Like, if you were really open-minded, one, you wouldn't have to go around telling people you were open-minded. You just wouldn't. But secondly, like, you would respect that someone has a different opinion than you do. Cool. Awesome. Maybe I can actually learn something from that person. You know,
nothing wrong with people having different opinions. It is the way for us to learn. You should listen to other people because you might learn something.
correct. Yeah, like for example, imagine talking to someone, Chris, and saying, you know, you happen to live with a lot of fear about something, and you meet someone who doesn't live with fear about the same situation. Wouldn't it be kind of amazing to learn how does that person overcome the fear? What are they doing differently than you are?
Exactly.
Right? Or, you know, hey, I'm not taking care of myself well enough. What am I not doing properly that, you know, Sandy or Carla might have insight into that allows me to maybe take better care of myself? What am I missing? Hey, I'm working out, I'm doing this, but what's going on? I mean, should I not have the milkshake at 9 o'clock at night? Maybe that's what it is. But you know what I mean? Like, in other words, we have blind spots, and there are things that we don't pay much attention to, but we're never open to learning from other people. Like, you know, I've met a lot of people in the last year and a half who are almost debilitated with fear, believing that their life is a mess and the world is awful and we're in this mess and there's nothing we can do until just wait it out. And I've heard insatiably people say, we're all in this together. And the first thing I say to myself is, that's interesting. My experience is completely different than everyone else's who has said this. One, I'm not with you, so I'm not in this with you. Two, I don't know what in this really means. Because, like, are we, like, actually getting into some kind of building? Like, what's going on here? But I don't experience this in the same way. And I'm not saying people don't and people aren't suffering. My point is, I don't relate in that way because that's not my experience. I've created it differently. So I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong. I'm just wondering, why aren't we more willing to listen and learn?
And that is why of today's conversation, we need to ask people who are watching. Idris, we would love to see you on tomorrow's Conversation for Humanity or on the Humanity Happy Hour. Thank you for chiming in as you have today. We greatly appreciate those insights. But when it comes to stress, ladies and gentlemen, we want to hear from you. How, when you come back next week on Share and Care with Sandy, we would like to know, how did you handle your stress and what was it like for you? Did you do this? Did you walk the dog? Did you have another great and engaging conversation with Brian about having 18-hole therapy again? You know, hitting on the golf course.
That's the 19th hole fit therapy.
Okay. Okay.
That's a happy hour, Carl.
Yeah.
Happy hour. Well, that's Thursday.
Lead right into
Thursday's
that.
the 19th hole.
But see, ladies and
5
gentlemen,
o'clock somewhere.
but see, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're here for. We're here to listen to the heartbeat of humanity, to find out what is not only causing the stresses of your day, but what is that like for you, especially in your workplace. We want to hear from you. So if you guys are watching this on the replay, please comment, tell us where you're from, and we would like to reach out to you and have that great and engaging conversation, and come back to us in the first part of the conversation on next week. We'd like to hear from you. What did you do? What didn't work? And why didn't it work? And we would love to hear from you.
Sounds good.
So, Sandy, thank you so much for hosting again today. I greatly appreciate you so much. And thank you, everyone, for being on to the call today. So, I believe what's going to be on tap, Brian, I think a lot of the topics that we have covered, I know there's one you want to bring up to the table on tomorrow's call, isn't there?
Which one? You've been bombarded by me and Grant.
I know we've been bombarded. I'm just saying, I mean, there's so many great ones, because the Seen and Unsaid, that was a good one. But I think maybe there might be one that we need to talk, because now we've kind of led down this road the way it's led us today, is maybe why are people giving into the fear of what's being done, whether it be in the workplace or otherwise? why are we giving into that? And it's like what you said before, Brian. Fear is just a construct.
Was it in the context of why do we allow other people to make decisions for us? And was that, what was it like?
To give up our power.
I don't remember.
To give up our power, I believe.
Power's an interesting one.
Yeah. And Idris, thank you. I would love to check that out. And if we're not connected, please just get connected with me, Sandy, Carla, Brian, and Melinda. We would love to have a great and engaging conversation with you, Idris. Thank you so much. But yeah, I think that's the one thing. Go ahead. What is it?
Chris, was it the one with liking the idea of being a leader, but not actually wanting to be a leader?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for everybody coming today. I always appreciate it, and I enjoy listening to your views on things. So,
All righty.
see you tomorrow for Christmas.
See you
Have a great
tomorrow.
day.